Yo, what's going on, guys? Welcome back to a brand new video. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. I really do appreciate it. If you're absolutely in love with the New York Knicks like I am, make sure you click that red subscribe button down below and you light up that post notification bell so you do not miss any future content on this channel. So the topic I wanted to talk about today is our big three. Maybe if you ask like 18 other fan bases, obviously there's 30 teams in the NBA, but I'm thinking about like competitive teams, good teams, but there are some teams that aren't really good at the NBA, but some other fan bases may look at the New York Knicks like, oh, that's your big three. Jalen Brunson, Barrett, and Julius Randle. There's not really a superstar there. There's not tons of upside there. So some fan bases may definitely laugh at that big three. But in today's video, I wanted to talk about the reality of this big three and how I really think about it. First off, I'm not going to say this big three can make it to an NBA Finals. Maybe an Eastern Conference Finals, because you can say if certain things broke right with floor spacing in that Miami series. Maybe if Brunson made that read to Josh Hart, if Josh Hart knocked down that three, do you think we would have had momentum and took it in 7 games? If Emmanuel quickly stepped up, it could have been a totally different story. But I don't want to do the what-if game. The Heat were the more physical team. They were the better clutch team down the stretch. They had more consistent floor spacing, even though you could say both of these teams were really up and down shooting the basketball. Jalen Brunson played his heart out. What if Julius Randle stepped up? Barrett was awful in Game 6, even though he figured it out after Game 1 and Game 2 versus Cleveland. He was playing very well, but you can't have one made field goal when it comes to Game 6, even though he was still in double digits with 10 or 11 points. He just did not flat out play good basketball. So it is a big what-if scenario, but you could say if the Knicks played up to their standards, maybe they would have made it to the Eastern Conference Finals. But now there's starting to be some expectations. Jalen Brunson playing like an all-star, making it to the second round of the playoffs, competing, forcing it to 6 games, even though you could say the Heat were this underdog team and they looked awful in the finals. But compared to years past, it's like we can't settle for, oh, that's improvement. We can't settle for that anymore, because 2 of the last 3 years, the New York Knicks have been a playoff team. The first time it was like setting the culture. We lose to Atlanta, okay, but we didn't have a lot of talent. The Hawks, we all knew the Hawks were the more mentally tough team and they had better talent. Julius Randle did not step up. There was a lot of pressure on him, but he did not step up once again in the playoffs as well. So when I look at this big three, I think there is there's definitely some talent there. I think Jalen Brunson has the ability to have another big year because he's going to learn more from the FIBA game of how to read the floor. He did not consistently play well in FIBA basketball. It is a totally different game. You could camp in the paint. The floor spacing is not as good. You have to consistently move the basketball. You're not going to win with alone isolation scoring. You have Anthony Edwards. He had different otherworldly pieces. Obviously not a LeBron or Curry he was out there on the floor with, of Curry being off the ball, or even if there was a world of Brunson being off the ball, but he was still playing with some of the best talent in the world, no doubt about it. So that could definitely be a learning lesson to learn to move the basketball more, and it could help out in the playoffs. But you could definitely say the construction of this team, there's not consistent floor spacing. But, it's a totally different game. I didn't think of Brunson any different after watching FIBA basketball. And he played 48 minutes in Game 5 versus Miami, dropped 38 points. In Game 6, he comes off playing 48 minutes, 38 points, goes on to have 41 points, plays majority of the basketball game. I'm not taking anything away from Brunson at all. Brunson is a freaking assassin. He is a killer. He's not this pass-first guard. And when it comes to the construction of this team, I do think there's definitely some work to do. But he's a 48% shooter from the field. He can kill you from mid-range. Ridiculous footwork, so unpredictable. He can kill you from 3, 41% three-point shooter, very efficient in the paint. He has the head fakes. He can do the step throughs at times. Just ridiculously good touch. He knows how to draw fouls. And just him shooting fadeaways at 6'1", he is so unorthodox. He can go and grab rebounds. Again, he's not this pass-first guard. Sometimes I like to see him consistently make the right reads out there on the basketball floor. It's a personnel thing and reading the floor, like I mentioned, the floor spacing and the construction of this team, because the way this team is constructed, it doesn't put Brunson in a position to make certain reads out there on the floor. But we also saw under Steve Kerr that there were guys cutting at times, and he just wasn't consistently making the right read out there on the floor, even though sometimes he would take 7 or 8 shots in a game, and he was looking to pass the basketball, and then he had some turnovers. He was getting abused defensively. So I understand Brunson's not the perfect player, but he did show that he is fearless. He even stepped up in the playoffs with the Mavericks, and he was worth every single penny for the New York Knicks. When it came to playoffs, when it came to the regular season, we wouldn't have went to the second round of the playoffs without Jalen Brunson. He's a fearless competitor. When he's playing like shit, he says he plays like shit. It's no excuses game for Brunson. He has no doubt about it. Built for New York. And I don't know if he's a number 1. He's probably not a number 1. He's probably a very good number 2 option. And when I think about it, Jamal Murray's not the number 1 option on the Nuggets. Obviously, it's Jokic, but then it's Murray. You have Michael Porter Jr. They had Bruce Brown. The thing with the Nuggets, because you could say Murray's a little bit better than Brunson. Obviously, Murray hit big time shots in the playoffs, went to the finals, but also when you have Jokic, it helps. But the difference between like Murray's situation and Brunson's situation, like Murray's a very good number two when healthy. Brunson's probably a very good number two. Brunson doesn't have that number one. And then you look at Jamal Murray, like Jamal Murray has that number one, and he had consistent facilitating and making the right reads. And Murray's more of that score first guard as well. He's an underrated passer of the basketball, but he's definitely a score first guard. Yeah, he had Jokic that made the right reads. Bruce Brown, Christian Braun when he's out there on the floor. They're taught to swing around the basketball. That's not the case with Jalen Brunson and the New York Knicks. So they haven't built the right facilitation or right team really around Brunson. I'm not saying to build the team around Brunson, but the reality is Julius Randle and RJ Barrett are definitely score first players. They don't look to get others involved right away. Julius Randle, I would say, is a pretty solid passer of the basketball, but he does not consistently make the right basketball play, does not have consistent instincts. Same thing with RJ Barrett, and I like both of those players. But when it comes to being a contender, I know a lot of people are like, oh, you're thinking about being a contender, like we're the New York Knicks. You have to get that mindset out of your mind. And I want Julius Randle to ball out and RJ. And I'm not saying we're shit with those players. We're a locked playoff team. I think we're going to the playoffs when you have those guys because you're still a good team. It's just like there's no superstar upside. And when you have these score first guards or score first players in your big three, like Brunson's very efficient, but Julius Randle and RJ aren't. That's the scary part here. You better be damn efficient if you're looking to shoot jump shots off the dribble, Julius Randle. You're taking 8 threes per game, but you shot 34% from three, which is a couple percentages under league average. The prior season, you shot 31% from three. RJ Barrett, 31% three-point shooter, and if you can't shoot it from three, you better be able to score from mid-range territory and understand that's not what he's being asked to shoot jump shots off the dribble in the starting lineup, but when he's running in that second unit with Josh Hart, he's given that opportunity to have the ball in his hands and go and create, and that's just not part of his game yet. Maybe it is this upcoming season to shoot those in-rhythm jumpers, but he is someone that likes to be aggressive, work downhill, try to draw fouls, finish through contact on the left side, starting to like develop himself a little more on the right side, but sometimes he likes to get into the paint, stop on a dime, try shooting that fall away jumper. I'd like to see more of that unpredictability. But is it because he just can't create a lot of separation? Does he not have this very good handle? I think he's a solid handle, not a great handle, but he doesn't have a lot of elevation, doesn't have this quick jumper. But I hope he gets back to being at least a league average three-point shooter like in year two, like Randle did as well, but that was also the year there was no crowd, so there's a world that it's like less pressure, performance anxiety. I'm not saying RJ has performance anxiety because he plays like he's someone that is fearless out there on the floor, but I bet that really does help because there's some players' numbers that went up from three when it came to that virus year of like literally no fans at all, and eventually some fans came in. So that's the problem here. You have Brunson who's very efficient, and maybe we're asking him to facilitate, but there's not much movement. And if you are facilitating, if you're kicking it out, it's to guys that aren't very efficient three-point shooters. There's not much movement, but Brunson's just not a pass-first point guard. That's the reality there. And when it comes to that big three, you have no real facilitator there consistently. When Brunson's probing around, I'd like to see him make a better read sometimes and go up with the floater. And I'm not bashing Brunson at all. Sometimes I would just like to see him make a better read. But he is very efficient as a scorer, so sometimes I don't blame him. Out of Randle, RJ, and Brunson, not one of those guys averages 7 assists per game. You don't have that big-time facilitator. And in my opinion, you need floor spacers. Grimes is a solid facilitator, but he doesn't have the ball in his hands like a majority of time to be that guy that just changes the offense. Mitchell Robinson's not a good facilitator. He's not being asked to do that, and that's not his game. He's kind of an old school big. He sets screens, rolls to the basket. He's a good shot blocker, beast on the offensive glass. He plays with a certain amount of tenacity. Josh Hart is a facilitator, but in the second unit. So when you lack floor spacing as a big three, and you don't have like facilitating or making consistently the right basketball pass, you're going to be limited. The ceiling is we may go to the second round of the playoffs again, but with this big three, if that continues to happen, maybe they get split up. That's why I believe there has to be sacrifice here. There needs to be sacrifice when it comes to this unit. Roles have to be changed. The offense needs to be changed. Someone needs to go to Tom Thibodeau and say, this isn't working. I know we made it to the second round of the playoffs. Great accomplishment. And I'm not trying to be greedy, but I just want to see the maximum potential of this team. If Quickly steps up even higher at a next level, maybe we go deeper into the playoffs. Not saying the NBA Finals. But Julius Randle may need to make a sacrifice. RJ may need to make a sacrifice of less shots in the offense. Be a decoy so it can make things easier for a Brunson, make things easier for an RJ Barrett. You know, Julius Randle, you're not the number one option, at least entering this season. Last year, maybe you could say he was, because he was more proven than a Brunson, even though Brunson stepped up in the playoffs. But I'm talking about regular season wise, proving it in New York. Now it's time, like Randle, you're not the number one option. You're still going to get shots in the offense, but you don't have to be fresh and up as much offensively. We need you competing 110% every single possession on the defense side of the basketball. We need more of that hustle role. We need to see you making wiser passes, but that also may not be his game. We've seen it time after time again now in a Knicks uniform. He cannot consistently make those high IQ plays. That's why I think Randle's future is in jeopardy in a Knicks uniform, not because of his talent, but because of his basketball IQ. You know, the way RJ Barrett plays is how Julius Randle should be playing. I know Randle has more of this finesse game. He has shown that he can work downhill. He can post up, but he does like to settle outside on the perimeter, and there needs to be less of a consistency of settling outside on the perimeter. That definitely needs to be better, because you look at RJ, he's looking to attack guard or small forward, because we all want him to be a mid-range guy, you know, be more consistent from three. But Randle's one of the biggest guys on the court constantly, at least strength and physicality wise. He's not 7 foot, but I want to see that, and I want to see him learn some things methodically, like Brunson. You could tell Brunson's reading the defense. Like, it just looks like he knows where to go every time he's going to the basket. Randle needs to go to Brunson and say, like, what are you seeing here? Because I want to become more of an efficient player for us, like, every trip down offensively. I want to make the wiser decision with the basketball. He's a good rebounder, and when he's engaged, he is a good defender. But RJ, the same thing, needs to constantly be engaged. We need more roles on this team, not just give the basketball to this guy and go to work and score the ball. Like, we need to be more prepared as a basketball team, and we made it to the second round of playoffs. Again, that is amazing for us because we've been through so much shit, but we need to stop settling. We need to see more of an upside with this group. And when I think of the perfect scenario, this is just, I'm not saying to trade RJ, I'm not saying to trade Julius Randle. I'm rooting for both those guys. As long as they're in New York Knicks uniforms, I'm rooting for them, and I hope we go as far as possible. But when you have a guy like Brunson that's not a pure facilitator, a very good scorer, you need a facilitator next to him. If it's a number two that has a combination of scoring and passing, or the different scenario, not saying we're ever getting an Anthony Edwards, we need someone with this damn near superstar level talent that could score efficiently. Like I said, if you're looking to score first or be one of the top scorers in the offense, you better be efficient. And that's the problem. There's an inconsistency of efficiency with Julius Randle and RJ Barrett, especially down the stretch for Julius Randle. Or I'm okay with Brunson getting the ball down the stretch because we can consistently count on him to step up. But you need someone that can score the basketball, 20-plus point per game score next to Brunson that's also efficient from three, from mid-range. You know, he's athletic. We need some more athleticism. So I think of like an Edwards, and then you plug in the complementary pieces. It's like, damn, you have Edwards and Brunson. That's damn good. And Edwards is pretty much the number one at that point. And at your 3 and 4 position, you have guys that can score, but they don't need the ball like crazy. They're able to floor space, they're able to knock down threes, they're able to just make the basic reads out there on the floor, and they don't hurt your offense down the stretch. They're like, yeah, I'm going to spot up and look to take a shot if it's open, but we know it's the right decision to give the ball to Brunson or Edwards and have movement in the offense. Utilize Edwards' athleticism, add some length to the lineup. Like a Finney Smith, for example, someone that can space the floor, can defend, makes the right reads out there on the floor. I'm okay with Mitch. It's just that Mitch is in a weird spot. That's the problem. Like, we want Mitch to be more than what he is because of the way the team is constructed. Like, if Mitch was in a different situation, Mitch may be talked about even differently, but he's one of the main reasons we won the first round of the playoffs. So what I take away from this big three, it's very talented, but they've got to learn. There's times that it's like Brunson's constantly stepping up. Randle may be scoring, but it's very rare. There is games, but I feel like it is rare when they all three step up at the same time. We've seen in the playoffs, like Randle's inconsistency, IQ-wise, not taking the right shots, or it just looks like I don't want to say he's like shitting his pants. You could say he is, but where's the touch, like kind of in the regular season when he's looking to finish at the basket? Where's the authority? Where's that want that we sometimes see in the regular season? That's the thing. There should never be a question of, is Julius Randle giving it his all? RJ figured it out in the playoffs before Randle. And I know Randle was hurt, but if you're good enough to drop 23 points in game 2, you're good enough to step up in game 6, etc. So I don't like the lack of want sometimes from Randle. I feel RJ always wants it, but he needs to be better defensively. Just I want to see this team reach the maximum potential, but you have good scorers, but you don't have facilitators, you don't have defenders. None of those guys are really good defenders. There needs to be a step forward for Randle and RJ defensively, and they need to become better passers. RJ needs to become a better three-point shooter. Randle cannot be shooting 8 threes per game, but I understand because we don't have great floor spacing. Tips could just say, you're open, you take it, but sometimes Randle isn't open and he also settles for it. But that's my thoughts. I feel there's a lack of structure, movement-wise, lack of three-point shooting, defense, versatility out of RJ offensively. Let me know down below. I think our ceiling with this big three is possibly the Eastern Conference Finals at best if Quickly steps up on top of it and, someone accepts a new role and they're not all looking to score first in certain situations and we just play smarter basketball. But yeah, let me know down below your thoughts. I appreciate your support. Peace out, y'all.